Straight ahead on Law&Crime Daily. Closing arguments in the federal trial of R. Kelly.
What evidence has been shown to this jury for them to be able to find him guilty?
Trial attorney Bernarda Villalona gives us a window inside the courtroom. And a political heavyweight takes the stand in the federal trial of Elizabeth Holmes. What this testimony could mean for the former billionaire's case. Plus, the search continues for Brian Laundrie. We asked famed forensic pathologist Dr. Michael Addon what to expect from the autopsy of Gabby Petito as her death is ruled a crime.
They think right now that they know that it's a homicide.
And later, Scott Peterson back in the courtroom. What will it take for the convicted wife killer to receive a new trial? Law&Crime Daily, covering court cases from coast to coast. And welcome to Law&Crime Daily. I'm Simon Chowdhury in for Brian Buckmeyer along with Terry Austin. Now we begin in the federal trial of R. Kelly as closing arguments are underway. In what some would say is a bizarre comment, defense attorneys compared the singer to Martin Luther King Jr., saying the government must be held accountable. Ahead of this, the prosecution wrapped their closings, and after nearly 6 hours that stretched across 2 days in court. Earlier this week, testimony in Kelly's trial finally concluded after nearly 5 weeks, with 45 witnesses testified against him, including 11 accusers and former employees. R. Kelly faces charges for multiple sex crimes, including sex trafficking and racketeering. The R&B singer opted not to take the stand in his own defense. Well, the government painted the singer as a predator, wrapping their closing arguments with 2 simple words: convict him. But the defense quoted MLK's "I've been to the mountaintop" speech, adding Kelly did not have to recruit women. Well, trial attorney Bernarda Villalona was at the courthouse today, and she joins us now to explain what she heard.
The government in this case, the prosecution, has concluded their closing arguments that lasted about 6 hours, how they broke down this case for this jury to be able to deliberate on these charges. You heard of the video evidence, you heard of the corroboration in terms of text messages, in terms of phone records, in terms of there is certain video and letters that were found in the storage facility for R. Kelly. Aside from that, the prosecutor also went into great detail about the medical records and how R. Kelly had genital herpes and had sex with at least 2 of the Jane Does who contracted this herpes from R. Kelly. In addition to that, you heard about the 3 Jane Does that were all underage, that R. Kelly engaged in sexual contact with them despite their age. You have sexual exploitation, you have forced labor, you have bribery, you have all these types of racketeering acts, and the prosecutor in this case was able to break it down. I'm Bernarda Villalona from the Law&Crime Trial Network.
All right, thank you for that report. We're joined now by co-host Terry Austin and law professor Kirk Burkhalter. Now, Kirk, let's start with you, and let's start right away with the defense's comparison of R. Kelly to Martin Luther King Jr. And on top of that, they compared girls calling him daddy to former Vice President Mike Pence calling his wife mother. Now, this is an unconventional closing argument, to say the least.
Unconventional, to say the least, and I would say more of an act of desperation. The problem with that type of closing argument is that you risk alienating and offending the jury, and especially in a case that involves a sex crime, sexual assault, some form of sexual abuse, and underage minors and so forth. Juries are not very tolerant about that. We also heard this argument that he did not need to get women, so to speak, in this manner. And that's one of the oldest, most offensive arguments that sexual predators tend to make. So it's certainly an act of desperation by comparing himself to Martin Luther King. It's about as close you can come to blasphemy when talking about a non-deity. And I think they risk very much alienating the jury, and it will be seen for what it is, just an act of desperation and a Hail Mary pass.
Interesting. Yeah, those are some risky words. Now, Terry, this has been a long trial with a total of 50 witnesses, including 5 for the defense. Do you think the defense has established reasonable doubt?
No, I don't. I mean, there might be one juror who thinks that, but in addition to doing a closing that was a Hail Mary, as Kirk said, I think that they failed to put on defense witnesses who would help Kelly's case. Each of them got on the stand stating that they never saw any abuse by Kelly, when in fact they just were not in the room. And as far as the women were concerned, saying that they were doing it on their own and that they were willing, that too is something that sexual offenders often claim. So I don't think that there's any doubt here. And I think that at the end of the day, the verdict will come back against Kelly.
All right. Well, we have some other top celebrity news as well. This time we're talking about pop star Britney Spears. She files to have her father removed from her conservatorship immediately.
I've worked my whole life. I don't owe these people anything.
In a filing this Wednesday, Spears' lawyers petitioned a Los Angeles court to replace Father Jamie Spears with a temporary conservator. Britney, her lawyers argue that Jamie Spears should be removed right away due to the singer's recent engagement and plans to negotiate a prenuptial agreement. Now, all this comes weeks after Jamie Spears suggested the 13-year-long conservatorship should come to an end. Both sides are set to meet back in court on September 29th. Now, that's just one day after the Netflix documentary Britney versus Spears, chronicling the ups and downs of her conservatorship, is set to be released. All right, turning now to Arizona, the jury is officially seated for the man accused of killing a Mennonite school teacher. Mark Gooch is charged with the first-degree murder of Sasha Kraus, a 27-year-old Mennonite school teacher who disappeared from her community in January of 2020. Her remains were found over a month later in Arizona. An autopsy revealed she died of blunt force trauma and a gunshot wound to the head. Now, cell phone records put Gooch in the area at the suspected time of the crime. Previous text messages from the defendant that showed disdain towards the Mennonite community were also uncovered. Well, a crime lab reported that the bullet taken from Kraus's skull was fired from a gun that Gooch had in his possession. Jury selection concluded on Wednesday. Now, the court was dark on Thursday, but opening arguments are set to begin on Friday. Well, still ahead on Law and Crime Daily, the ongoing search for Brian Laundrie, the person of interest in the death of Gabby Petito. But first, a former defense secretary takes the stand against Elizabeth Holmes in her federal wire fraud trial. More on what he had to say. That's next.
Hi, this is Dan Abrams with exciting news for all of our Law and Crime followers on YouTube. You can now get the live Law and Crime Network with YouTubeTV for all of your daily live trial coverage, legal news, expert analysis, and original true crime programs. Subscribe to YouTubeTV today and then locate Law and Crime in the channel guide. And for only $1.99 a month, you can add the network to your bundle. Watch Law and Crime every day with YouTubeTV. We put you in the jury box.
And welcome back to Law and Crime Daily. We turn now to the West Coast as the federal trial of former billionaire Elizabeth Holmes sees a political heavyweight testify for hours. On Wednesday, former Defense Secretary James Mattis took the stand for nearly 4 hours, detailing his investments in the company to the tune of $85,000. Mattis served on Theranos' board from 2013 to 2016. On Wednesday, testifying he was interested in the company's products to be used in military application. Holmes faces 12 counts of fraud for her time with the now defunct Theranos. The Stanford dropout claimed the company would revolutionize blood testing, but later investigations found many problems with those tests. Now, if convicted, Holmes faces up to 20 years in prison. She has pleaded not guilty. So bringing back co-host Terry Austin and law professor Kirk Burkhalter. Terry, so far we've heard from former employees and now a prominent board member. What comes next?
I think the prosecution is doing a great show right now. They put on the former employees. The first one they put on actually was the former controller, who said that investors lost millions and millions of dollars. But I think they're going to do the employees, they will do the investors, they will do the board members. And I also think they are going to show patients who were injured as far as the blood tests were concerned, or injured in the sense that they didn't get the proper results. So I think it's overall going to be very effective, demonstrating that investors lost money, but we really had real people behind those who were injured, and that would be the patients.
The emotional part of this. Well, Kirk, let's talk about this. The prosecution argues Holmes knowingly duped people out of thousands of dollars, but the defense argues she always intended to revolutionize the blood testing world, but failed at her goal. So how could an argument like this hold up?
Well, that's always the counter argument to intent is, oh, an accident, or I didn't know. Now, if you look at the witness that went on today, James Mattis, very credible witness, 4-star general, former defense secretary. And if he thought that there was some impropriety, and he felt and alluded to the fact that he felt that he was somehow being, the board was being taken, that goes a long way to dispel this theory that, well, I intended to do the right thing, but this just so happened, this was an accident. At best, it was negligence. So it's the only argument that one can make, because the result is the result. The product did not turn out as it was intended to be. So the prosecution has a very strong case, just like Terry mentioned. However, she has to rebut this evidence.
That's right. All right. Intentions here is going to definitely be obviously under the spotlight. Now let's stay on the West Coast, again in California, where an Army veteran is now charged with kidnapping, rape, and attempted rape of 3 women after more than a year-long spree. Authorities say Robert Yucas kidnapped these women off a running trail in Orange County between January of 2020 and August of this year. In early September, Yucas was identified as a suspect in a San Diego crime. Well, the DNA evidence in that case helped pinpoint him as a suspect in the Orange County attacks. The veteran has been charged with 8 felony counts relating to the attacks and faces a maximum of 39 years to life, plus 6 years if convicted on all charges. Well, coming up on Law and Crime Daily, new updates for Scott Peterson. Yeah, remember that name? Well, he's the man convicted of murdering his pregnant wife. What he faces before the possibility of a new trial. Plus, the search is on for Brian Laundrie. What charges Gabby Petito's fiance could face if he's found. Welcome back. Many questions still unanswered in the disappearance of Gabby Petito. Another day of searches come up empty as authorities look to find her missing fiancé, Brian Laundrie. The search continued Thursday near the Florida Reserve, where Laundrie told his parents he was going for a hike. That was last Tuesday. Meantime, witnesses who saw the pair just days before Petito disappeared have now come forward. A Jackson Hole restaurant confirms the couple ate there and have reported the information to the FBI. Another couple who say they were eating at the restaurant at the same time remember Brian Laundrie fighting with the manager, a waitress, and a hostess. They say Laundrie was acting aggressive, and Petito even apologized on his behalf. Board-certified forensic pathologist Dr. Michael Addon says witness information and body cam video from before her death is taken into consideration when determining manner of death.
This shows how important social media has become. Whatever has happened prior to the death that is can be viewed, such as the scene or whatever statements have been made to other people, is part of the autopsy, and that helps determine the manner of death.
Let's bring back a law professor Kirk Burkhalter and co-host Terry Austin. Terry, if Brian Laundrie is located, what possible charges could he face as of now?
As of right now, he could be facing charges of fleeing the scene, obstruction of justice. I mean, obviously, if they find more information as far as the body is concerned and as far as what actually happened to Gabby, he could face charges such as murder or manslaughter. And I think that if, in fact, they know it was a murder, it could be tied back to him. And I find it interesting also that his parents could face charges of obstruction of justice because they did not assist with finding where Brian is. We still don't know where he is.
And Kirk, an autopsy confirmed Gabby Petito's manner of death is homicide, but so far we don't know the cause of death. In your legal opinion, when can we expect to have more answers?
Well, this is really important because the definition of homicide is when one causes the death of another. But that in and of itself doesn't mean that one is liable for a criminal penalty. So we could find it out soon. However, given that the boyfriend is still missing, it's a possibility that they do not want to release that information because hopefully they find him, they'll be able to interrogate him and question him and so forth. And you don't want to give him too much information. That being said, in this day and age, we could find that out pretty much any day. I would suspect that they certainly have an idea of how she died, as opposed to just simply ruling it a homicide.
Of course, we'll be continuing to follow this story, but we're going to turn now to more top legal news. And 25 years after her disappearance, a judge rules there is sufficient evidence to take the murder of Kristen Smart to trial. A father-son duo, Paul and Ruben Flores, are charged in connection to the 1996 disappearance and murder of Smart, a Cal Polytech student. Smart was last seen leaving a party with Paul Flores, who is now charged with her murder. His father, Ruben, is charged with accessory, allegedly helping hide her body after the fact. Now, although Smart's body has never been found, she was declared legally dead in 2002. The pair have an arraignment scheduled for October. And when we come back, a new trial for Scott Peterson. Our legal experts break down the likelihood that the convicted wife killer could be retried. And welcome back. An update now in a case we have been following for years. A judge rules convicted wife killer Scott Peterson will be resentenced to life imprisonment later this fall. This as Peterson's defense team inches closer to the promise of a new trial. Peterson was convicted of the 2002 death of his wife Lacey and their unborn son Connor. In 2005, he was given the death penalty, but the sentence was later reduced to life without parole. After the California Supreme Court cited significant errors in the jury selection, it's on those grounds of juror misconduct that Peterson's defense team say the court owes him a new trial. Juror number 7 later revealed to be Rochelle Neese. Well, she's accused of failing to disclose domestic abuse in her past. Peterson's defense argue Neese purposely tried to convict him because of her past issues. Well, court documents show Peterson's defense says Neese will plead the Fifth Amendment at next year's evidentiary hearing unless granted immunity from the prosecution. On Wednesday, a judge ruled Peterson will be resentenced to life in prison before it's decided whether Peterson will be granted another trial. All right, let's bring back Terry and Kirk. Kirk, it's been almost 20 years since Scott Peterson's murder convictions. What is the likelihood he could receive a new trial based on juror misconduct?
Well, there are two sides to this argument. One is the fundamental right to trial by jury of your peers, an impartial jury. And then the other competing argument is that this impacted the trial, that somehow his trial was prejudiced. And I think that's the mountain that he has declined, given the weight of the evidence and everything that was presented. The outcome would have been different had you not had this jury misconduct. So a lot of it is going to hinge on the testimony of the juror herself and what other evidence they put forth. Not going to be so easy for him to get a new trial.
And Terry, break down exactly what this jury misconduct issue is.
Well, what the allegation is that she lied twice. She was asked during voir dire, the questioning during jury selection, whether or not she was involved in a legal proceeding. She said no. Well, in fact, she did ask for a restraining order against her boyfriend's ex-girlfriend. That's a legal proceeding. She was also asked, was she a victim of a crime? And she said no. And her explanation publicly for that was, well, I don't consider myself a victim. We know now that she is claiming, I'm not going to get on the stand without immunity. We know the prosecution is considering not giving her immunity. She's taking the fifth. So the question really is, why can't she say what she said in public on the stand?
And Kirk, when you hear what Terry's explaining, do you think that's going to have an effect on what's going to be the outcome? Because how can you prove that she intentionally did this?
She is not on trial. So this cannot be a trial about the juror. Scott Peterson was the party that was on trial, and this is about him. And the reason why I bring that up is there's only but so much evidence that can be brought to light, again, to determine whether she intentionally lied. It's really going to be her word and whether she is believed. So it's going to be very difficult to prove this. And it depends on how the veracity of her testimony, whether she is to be believed.
And Terry, could this issue make future jurors think twice how they answer questions during jury selection?
Absolutely. She could be held in contempt, and future jurors, I think, are going to be worried about the fact that they may have to pay a fine or even serve jail time. So I think whatever happens to Rachelle's niece is going to have an impact.
All right, well, obviously we will be continuing to follow this. I want to thank both of you for joining us and joining us here on Law and Crime. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time as we discuss justice in America.